And welcome back to the Road to Bangor. Joining me now is Fort Kent boys basketball coach Larry Murphy. Murph, this year you had 15 wins on the year, another great season. I mean, you had several overtime games, as you told me. What's been the key for the success of your team this year, Larry?
Beginning of the year, we had 6 new faces to work into the system, and 3 kids that were pretty much veterans from last year. We were worried about how would we respond to some pressure games, because we lost a lot of leadership last year, and the graduation of Laughn Berthiaume and Brad Courier. But the kids have stepped up, and they've worked real hard. I think the key to them is we found some people that were willing to sacrifice an awful lot of energy and cause the ball to bounce your way. We just kept in motion and worked hard and stayed persistent. They've come through real well.
You know, I think the interesting thing is, taking a look at your schedule, you've picked up some major wins this year. You swept Presque Isle. You were able to go on and pick up a win over Caribou in overtime. You had 2 overtime games with Caribou. Taking a look at that, I mean, did the kids develop more confidence as the year went along? Or
to be truthful, in the first Caribou game, I would have liked to have had a couple more weeks. I was going in there thinking if we could hold our own and avoid big runs of mistakes or let them get any momentum built up, we could maybe play with them and save us some energy to look forward to the second game. But the kids really picked up their game and played real hard and got themselves in good rhythm, and we played well against them the first time out.
You know, and of course your team isn't the biggest team in Class B or in the county by any stretch of the imagination. You're going up against a Dexter team. You got a quick scouting report on them last night. They're pretty tall, aren't they?
They've got a kid about 6'7" or 6'8". They've got a couple other people that are somewhere around 6'3" to 6'4", 6'5". What might help us is the other people that are 6'2" or better like to play on the perimeter, so that might make the matchups a little better for us to contend with. What we have trouble with is when we have 2 teams with, or have a team with 2 strong post players, some size on the blocks, because we only go 6'2" and 5'11" with our starting forwards, our power forward and our center. We come in off the bench with Matt Thibodeau at 6'5". So a team that has 2 good-sized post players gives us more trouble than others.
You know, this must have been a fun year for you, though. It's been a long while since you've ever swept Presque Isle. A few years since you've beaten Caribou. You had 6 overtime games, you told me, counting tournament games and stuff. It had to be a fun year, but also a little stressful. You might have gotten a little gray during the season, do you think?
We aged, or I aged quite a bit during the course of the year. After the 3rd or 4th overtime, it was like every time we went out there, we expected to play an extra period. So the kids, like I said, the kids worked hard, and sometimes I didn't know where they got the energy, because we'd go with that starting unit a good amount of the overtime, and they got it out and played real hard and played smart.
You know, really, as the year went along, it looked like you went a little more to your bench. You had a couple of injuries that forced you to go to your bench a little bit more, and they got some quality minutes as well, and that helped you down the stretch too, didn't it?
We found some people. We were forced to find some people. We went into the Presque Isle game, and that was the first game of a stretch where we would play 5 games in 7 days, and 2 of them against the Class A clubs and some of the contenders in C and D. We had an injury in the first quarter of the Presque Isle game, and it forced us to play some other people. We had another injury in the second half of the Presque Isle game, so we went deep into our lineup, and we found some people. They stepped up and did their jobs. They paid attention during the course of the year in the practices, and they knew their cues, and they knew their roles real well. They played their roles real well for us.
You know, you really haven't had a chance to see the other teams in Class B downstate, but with the B East and everything else that's going into effect down there, who do you see as the teams to watch in Class B at the tournament besides yourself?
Well, I'm hearing a lot about Camden Rockport. The Landreth kid is 6'7", but they say his game, he's added to his game. He's all over the core. He'll post up. He'll shoot the 3. He'll help them break pressure. He throws the ball over the top of the pressure when teams press them. I guess he's quite a mobile player, and he's added to his game. The MDI people, I heard, are 5 starters who are very unselfish. They work really hard together. It could be any one of 2, 3 people that would step up for them. It might be one person leading them in scoring one night, another person leading them another night. I guess they're one of the better units in the way of cohesiveness and unselfish play.
Of course, big upset in Class B the final night with Stearns going on and picking up the win over MDI. That propelled Stearns basically out of the playoff, and might give them a little confidence going in against Camden Rockport.
Yeah, it was a surprise to a lot of people. We're wondering that maybe, MDI had such a large lead on the number 2 team, and they weren't threatened to lose their spot. Who knows? Maybe they had a little let up at the end of the year, but Stearns has to be given some credit. They took the number 1 team on and beat them soundly after them.
Good luck Saturday morning. You're playing at 11:05 on Saturday against Dexter, Larry. Hopefully you'll be able to move by that game into the semifinals later in the week. Larry Murphy, the coach of the Fort Kent girls and Fort Kent boys, coming up later. We'll take a look at the Class D matchups. That's up next.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Big Time, the podcast. And as you can tell by the gentleman in the room, it's big time. We're doing a little roundtable with some of the basketball players from Fort Kent's Golden Era. Is what we're going to call it, a Golden Era roundtable of Fort Kent basketball. We got the coach, we got the players. We're going to tell some stories and see where things go. So just going to kick off with who we have on tonight's panel. We're going to start with the coach. We got Coach Murph making his third appearance on the podcast. Coach, how are you tonight?
Very good. Very good. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. Next in chronological order here, we're going to go the elder statesman making his debut on the video podcast. We got Travis Delisle, class of 92. Travis, how you doing tonight?
Very good, Tom. Very good. Glad to be here.
All right. And then we got class of 94. We're just going to start calling him Lonnie Big Time because this is all he does. He's the Stephen A. Smith of the Big Time Network. So
Used to be Lonnie Big Shot.
yeah. Lonnie, what's going on tonight?
I'm doing good. Normally I wear a shirt that's like a Fort Kent shirt for a Fort Kent podcast, but I went with the Coaches vs. Cancer for Laughn Berthiaume. My dorm team got this for me the year after my father passed, so I decided to wear this one today.
All right.
Very nice.
Class of 96, we got two guys. We got Ryan Martin. Ryan, what's going on tonight? Still a little bitter from the fantasy draft, it sounds like, from what was going on off air here.
Not at all. Not at all. Whatever coach says goes. But yeah, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be part of this amazing crew with Corey. So okay.
And then our last guy on the panel, we got Corey Thibodeau coming back for a second time here. Corey, why does everyone give you shit? What don't people know about this relationship here? How come it seems like everyone just gives you shit all the time?
Well, number one, I take it. I really don't care because I know I'm one person that is not lacking in self-confidence. So whatever they say just pretty much goes off my shoulders, and they know that I know what they know, so it doesn't matter. I'm good with it. It's all fine.
There we go. All right, so I kind of mentioned on the beginning, this is kind of like a golden era of Fort Kent basketball. When you think back of kind of like the best teams, some of the best players, I mean, this is it right here. So we're just going to kind of tell some stories from that time period. So I'm going to start off with Coach Murph. So you took over the program, you were saying, in 92, correct?
Yep. I walked across the street in 1991 and 92.
Yeah, so for those that hadn't listened to the solo podcast we did, when people haven't, you guys need to go check that out. That was an hour and 50 minutes of gold material. But Coach Murph, just for those that may not know the story, prior to 92, what were you doing?
I was at UMFK. I coached there for the last, I think it was 7 years, 84 to 91. I'd coached soccer for 16 years. There was a stretch of 20 years where I played 4 years I was 4 years as a player and 16 years as a coach. So when I left, it had been a 20-year stretch of soccer coaching and playing. Basketball, I picked up the basketball in 84 till the spring of 91. And to be dead honest, I had my dream job, but I was dead tired. I was burnt from recruiting. I was the one guy recruiting for 4 or 5 programs, 2 programs that were up and running and 2 programs I was trying to get going on the women's side. And so I ran out of gas. I wanted help, but they refused to give me some help. So worst day of my life when I handed in my resignation, and probably the best day of my life because I got to move on to a new thing, and it all worked out.
Yeah, I think you weren't really you mentioned some of the things that kind of burnt you out, but you had a lot more roles and responsibilities when you were at UMFK, right? Like you wore many hats, right?
Oh yes.
If you could just describe, because people think they may have it hard now, but tell them what you had to deal with when you were working at UMFK. How many hats did you wear?
Athletic director, men's soccer, men's basketball, women's volleyball, gym facilitator, intramural director, student advisor, trainer, sports information director. Sometimes I was a custodian. So
Is that all?
That's it. That's it. Yeah.
Just a few things right there. So I can understand why that would get you burnt out. And it seemed like things kind of lined up time-wise where there was an opening at the high school. Just curious, is that something you ever wanted to get back into? Like, was high school basketball kind of what you wanted to do? Or you mentioned UMFK kind of being your dream job. Just curious what that transition was like.
I think it was I was just lucky that I burnt out, and then there happened to be. I mean, I made a decision to leave. I actually walked across the street, and I went from doing all those things to being an ed tech. So my pay salary, the income salary went down a great deal, and then so I ended up picking up basketball when it opened up. I had already had baseball for a while, and then girls soccer. So that first year I was out of the college, I busied myself with girls soccer, boys basketball, boys baseball, and ed teching. So
just a couple things, to keep you busy right there.
yeah.
So Trav, you would have been you're the elder statesman with this crew right here. So just curious, prior to Murph arriving in '92, when you were coming up, because the guys that came after all you guys, including myself, we looked up to you guys. We wanted to do what you guys did, tournament runs, 1,000-point scores, all that stuff. But Trav, for you, being like the kind of the head of this group right here, what was the program like when you were coming into high school, in terms of, success-wise or culture-wise? Culture's a big word. Where were things at when you were coming up?
Yeah. Well, there really wasn't a lot of talk about boys basketball at the high school for quite a few years, even before we got there. And then my freshman year, they had a decent run. They had a good, there was 15 guys on varsity, and 13 of them were seniors. And they made a decent run. They had a good season. They missed a playoff berth to Holton by like 4 1,000ths of a point in the Hill system. It was crazy. And that would have been the first time, that they'd been there since the 70s. And then ultimately, we had Murph step in my senior year. And then we ended up by having to beat Holton at home to secure a playoff berth. And we ended up by doing that. So basketball really wasn't, culture-wise, it was, I hate to say it now because I love the game so much, but it was the thing that happened after soccer, really, because soccer dominated and we were successful. And when basketball season came around, there was no intensity. The whole mindset changed. You went from walking into any game you played in soccer knowing that you were going to win, and coming into basketball, you were walking in hoping not to get beat by 30. And that sucked because we all loved it. We loved the game. There was a group of my classmates and I that just loved the game and played all the time, but it didn't matter. I mean, we weren't going to be good. Unfortunately, coach came in my senior year, and that was like culture shock. Like, you went from basketball didn't really mean anything, winning 3 or 4 games my junior year, to basketball was everything, and you were going to do anything and everything it took to win, and you were going to do it his way and get it done the right way. And it was just a real mindset change. I remember, I'm going to tell a quick story just to show how big of a difference basketball culture and the mindset changed from one year to another. Our very first game, my senior year, we went down to Fort Fairfield and played, and we ended up by beating Fort Fairfield. And we beat them by 6, 7, 8. Wasn't a big win, wasn't real tight, but we stormed the court. The team stormed the court and acted like we had just won a state championship. And Murph was right in the middle of it and cheering us, and everyone was excited and allowed that to happen. But the second we got in the locker room, he looked at all of us and he said, "Boys," he said, enjoy this one. But it's only one of many that's going to get you to Bangor. And we need to take care of the rest of the season. Don't treat this like Bangor right now and lose sight of what you're going after. This is great. You won your first game. And shit, majority of that team was coming off 4-win seasons where we were getting beat by 30 and 40 every night. So that first win was huge. But he was quick to remind us, like, that's not the focus. The focus is not the first game of the season. It's the longevity and what we need to do to get there. So he definitely changed the culture of basketball in Fort Kent, no doubt about it.
And I know not too many people like to lose. I know you hate to lose. You're one of the most competitive guys that I know. Just curious, obviously when Murph came along, there was a culture change. But you mentioned too that you kind of grew up with a bunch of guys that just love the game, just love to play, hate to lose. You mentioned the drought and going to Bangor and those things. Were those goals you guys had coming into high school, like, hey, like, we're going to be the group to change this. We're going to be the group to get this program back to Bangor. Like, were those things you guys talked about when you guys were coming up?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. especially when we found out that Coach Murph was taking over. Then it was a whole different mindset, and we'd always talk about it, because we grew up back when I went to junior high. There was no Aroostook League or anything like that, so you just played. Fort Kent had 3 junior high teams. St. Francis had theirs. Wallagrass had a 6th grade team. Eagle Lake had theirs. So if you're in junior high basketball, that's all you played. Well, my 8th grade year, the school system decided to make a travel team, an all-star team. And that's after our middle school season. Then we went on and played the Fort Fairfields, the Van Buren's, Presque Isles, and all that. And I think that's what really ignited our group. That group of guys that made that team, that's what really ignited us. And I remember there was 3 of us. There was me, Brent Markey, and Carrie Michaud. I'd go stay with my father in Eagle Lake, and we were at the courts all the time. Down by Powell, they have the metal chain rims and everything, playing all the time. Free lights, just hook them up and go. And I remember the 3 of us just sitting there. We just walked to the store, got some drinks, we're sitting back, and we all said we want to make varsity our freshman year. That's what we want to do. We want to make varsity. But like I said, there was 15 varsity players, 13 were seniors. We didn't make that, but we made the JV team, which I think was, in hindsight, it was pretty big deal because we had a freshman team back then. And freshmen made freshmen. That was the way it was. JV was for anybody that was maybe not good enough for varsity, but definitely going to help them in the future. And we made that team, and we were starters on that team. And I think that just kind of fueled the whole group, And when that summer, when Coach came in, Carrie Michaud was running laps around the gym constant with ankle weights, constant. Just the Eagle Lake gym. And I remember hearing Coach tell the story about Carrie, how all of a sudden he just walked up to the rim and just dunked out of nowhere. And Coach was like, "What the hell? You can dunk?" He's like, "Yeah, I dunk all the time." But that was work that he put in all summer long. And we were so focused that year, Bangor bound. That's what we wanted. We wanted to get to Bangor. And we didn't get caught up in all of it until I think that last game of the season where it was win or go home. Coach did a really nice job of not focusing on Bangor throughout the season, and just really focused on getting better. Let's get better from game in and game out. Let's get better. We lose by 30 to Presque Isle one game. The next game we beat them at home by 4. Lose to Caribou by 30 something also, and take them down to the wire. So it was always about getting better, never really about getting to Bangor. And in that last game, it was like, "Hey boys, this is what you worked your asses off all season long. Take care of business, and we get down to Bangor." So yeah, the culture definitely changed, and we really ramped up the love for the game at that point. Once we knew Coach was on board, and because we'd had him, we had him one game my junior year. I don't know, Coach, you must remember this.
Oh, yeah.
Our coach was sick, couldn't make the game, and it was against Caribou, and they had just killed us. And that was my junior year, so we won 4 games that season, 3 or 4 games, and they beat us by 40 plus. And I can remember Coach Murphy walking into the locker room and telling us, looking at us, and it was like, everyone thinks that we can't run with these guys. We need to just slow the ball down, take care of the ball, don't turn it over, don't try to get up and down with these guys. Just play back. That's what everyone thinks you should do. He said, "It's not going to happen. You're going to get out there and you're going to kick their ass. And you're going to give everything you have. And if you're going to lose, you're going to go down, giving it everything you had." And I think that was a 7 or 8 point ball game. And we actually had chances to win, which was insane. But that was one game he coached us, one game my junior year. And everyone was like, wow. You just fed off his passion. You couldn't help but want to play hard for the man because he was so passionate about it. And then when we found out he was going to be our coach, then it was, woohoo. So let's go. We couldn't wait.
All right. So, Lon, you would have been next. So just curious, when you were growing up, what do you remember about the culture of Fort Kent basketball? Obviously, you had an older brother, so probably going to games and stuff like that. What do you remember about Fort Kent basketball growing up, and, just goals that you had once we got to high school?
So my older brother was a classmate with Travis. And again, I've said this on other podcasts that, Travis and my older brother's crew, they were the ones that sort of beat on me as I was coming up and kind of made me better. That first team, there was 11 seniors and then 2 sophomores on that team. So the guys that I had grown to play against were now kind of teammates of mine. You know, they didn't have a winning attitude, but the athletes that played were good athletes. I mean, they enjoyed the game and stuff. But I'd have to agree with Travis that Fort Kent was a soccer town. But I'll say this to kind of add to what Travis said, that, you know, Murph being at the college, see, we grew up going to the college too. So it's not like Murph was unknown to us. He had an excellent program over there. He you know, he said the recruiting, it kind of burned him out a little bit, but man, his recruits were studs. You know, I loved going to those games, and Murph's teams were always competitive and they played hard. And so again, when he was coming in, I was excited about that opportunity too. I was, you know, I was going to be a sophomore. I didn't know where I was going to end up, but I was fortunate to be on that first team. I think Fort Kent across the board in all sports, they have athletes who are dedicated, who want to win, who have pride in their town and their teams. And sometimes it just takes the right leadership. And so we got lucky at the right time with Murph coming in.
And then, you know, Travis was mentioning how, you know, it's more of a soccer school, you know, success in the 80s. You knew you were going to win games because it was a program. You were one of the soccer studs. But just curious, you know, basketball wise, you know, how much of it did you have like classmates that you were growing up with? Like, yeah, like when we get there, you know, we're going to go to Bangor. We're going to set these goals. We're going to make some noise basketball wise as well. Like, was that stuff you guys talked about?
Yeah, I mean, we actually we had a highly successful freshman team. Mark Graham, who had played for Coach Murph at UMFK, was our coach. He was intense. We had a solid group in my class, and like Travis mentioned, you know, there was the beginning of that middle school all-star team where you got a chance to kind of ramp it up and kind of come together and play together. Like in middle school, you're always playing against each other, and they always take the best players and they split you up and they put you on different teams and they try to even it out and make it competitive. And then when you get that opportunity to kind of come together on that middle school all-star team and then travel to Aroostook County, that is your first taste of what it's going to be like in high school. So it's a little bit of a foreshadowing. I thought we had a good, solid group. You know, Brad Courier, a classmate of mine who was that other sophomore on the varsity team. You know, I thought when we finally got an opportunity to play together, because we were on opposite teams all the time, it was a lot of fun, and you got to kind of mesh your talents and kind of see what it was like. So there was a lot of excitement for us coming into high school. And then, you know, that sophomore year for us, you know, when there was still a good, solid group that graduated before that. And I don't believe, Travis could correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe that many of those seniors were contributing players on the team the year before. So, you know, I felt like with a new coach, there was an opportunity if you got into practice and earned your spot that there was going to be a chance. I felt like it was brand new for everybody. And so there was a lot of excitement around it.
Right. So now I got to bring Ryan in here, Ryan, and I got to get a little bit of the backstory because you're the only one who we haven't really sat down with. Corey got into a little bit on the 1,000-point roundtable. We got to hear how he came up a little bit. You're the only one we don't have any background on, and I've heard legends and stories growing up. So we got to find out a little bit more about your backstory. So I mean, I've heard stories of you dunking in middle school. I've heard stories of Mark Graham refereeing your middle school games and playing one-on-one after games. Like we got another backstory. So for you growing up, you know, what's your earliest recollection of Fort Kent basketball? You know, what drew you to it? And are any of these myths true about you dunking in middle school and Mark Graham playing you one-on-one, things like that?
Where do I start? We can get into it. You know, it's kind of funny. You know, I don't obviously when you think about, you know, Travis and Laughn on this podcast, you know, grew up in Fort Kent. Like if you think about Corey and I, we're, you know, when you think about growing up outside of town, right? When you're young, it seems like you're miles and miles away. So I feel like I was a bit isolated from everything. Growing up, you know, I had hoop in my yard. I started playing, you know, probably. The funny story is I started playing, you know, obviously in fourth grade when kind of organized basketball started. But I remember, you know, going out to recess one day and playing with a bunch of kids. Never really had thought about playing basketball before. And this is like right before the season started. And I started hitting a bunch of shots. And all the guys are like, you got to come out and play. You got to come out and play. And that's kind of what got me started. You know, it's a bunch of like riffraff kids on the recess court convincing me to come out and try out for the team. And, you know, kind of started in, you know, fourth grade, played on the Eagles with, you know, Brad Courier was our guy. And he was always really hard on me, believe it or not. I didn't really come into my own until fifth grade. And that's kind of when Corey and I started getting into it. Corey and I had some battles growing up. going into that St. Francis gym, it was tough, especially when you had the St. Francis refs. It was tough to overcome. And I can get into a lot of those stories, but I'll keep it short.
The Thibodeau family ref most of those games.
So listen, I got a technical foul from Uncle Bob my 8th grade year where I couldn't even play in the playoffs. So come on.
Listen, Bob tees up everybody though. Come on now. Come on.
But long story short, as far as Fort Kent like sports or basketball in general at the high school go, I really didn't kind of start paying attention until probably junior high. I remember I started going to games when, believe it or not, I started going to girls' games first when like Neely Joler was a senior, and the girls had a pretty good squad. Really started enjoying it, obviously. And then at that point, Lon had mentioned we get into like the travel teams in 7th grade. So it was really kind of awesome. Like when you play against a guy like Corey, who was a really strong player, to be able to like team up with him on a travel team. As well as a couple of other guys from St. Francis, Eagle Lake, Fort Kent, travel outside of, the town borders to kind of actually see how good you compare. It was very interesting, I think, and that was a really good experience for us. I remember the first travel game in 7th grade. I think we played Limestone at their gym, and we beat them 44-4. So not that start. Then we get into like the Caribou Auditorium or the Armory games.
The Armory, yeah.
Where we actually start playing real competition, and you kind of get brought down back to earth. But that being said, like I said, growing up at St. John, I was a bit isolated from a lot of the downtown big time. I used to go to a couple of them here and there, and I remember, it's funny that Travis mentioned the last game his senior year when they had to beat Holton. This is a funny story. So they had to beat Holton to get into the tournament. I actually couldn't go to that game because I was actually banned from high school games in 8th grade because I was a bit rowdy when I went to them. I would really support the team. And long story short, I think Peter Karen, the vice principal at the time, actually kicked me out of a game. And I think it was a girls' game. It might have been Kendra's senior year or something. I might have said something, and it wasn't. I'll still to this day feel like I got picked out of the crowd, but I actually got banned from high school games for a period of time, so I couldn't go to that Holton game and I was really
It was probably Corey that yelled something.
Yeah. It was Corey's fault.
I know who it was. I'll never divulge, but I know who it was.
All right.
I was there in the vicinity, but I'll never divulge.
A quick, I'd like to add to Ryan's thing. When I was traveling, I spent a lot of time going to Allagash in the summertime, the fishing holes and whatnot. And I can remember going by his house all hours of the day. He'd be out there shooting. I also remember when I walked across the street and became an ed tech, an 8th grade English ed tech. Every recess. If you want to find Ryan Martin, he was at a hoop shooting with a half a dozen other guys. So what he's talking about there, that I witnessed that. I watched him as an 8th grader and during recesses, and I studied him pretty hard then. So when he got to high school and he came to try out, I already knew quite a bit about him. I watched Corey pretty closely that same year in what I call the intramural league, but anyway, it was a district league. But so I had some insight before they walked into the high school about what they were worth and what they put in for time.
Right. And before I get to Corey, real quick, Ryan, were you Duncan in middle school? Is that true, or?
I'll go back to a couple of other stories I want to talk to you about, not to take up too much time, but going back to the Mark Graham story. Like I know Mark's come up a couple of times in these podcasts, and I know we all know him, and obviously a really confident guy. The first time I met Mark Graham, I was probably 6th grade. He was refereeing a game at the middle school, and I was in the back. I don't know what the hell I was doing. Probably, playing around with some hockey sticks and pucks from phys ed class or something. And Mark comes in, and first thing he says is, "What are you guys doing back here? Smoking dope?" And so I don't know this guy from, and so I got to give him a look, right? And he's like, like, who the hell are you, right? And he's like, you got an attitude problem, and you better fix it before somebody else does. First thing came out of my brain. And it ended up that Mark and I became really good friends because he would ref our junior high games. And between my 8th grade year and freshman year, I remember having a conversation with Mark, and he's like, you're not only gonna make the team next year in high school, you're gonna start. And that's the first time that I actually really ever thought about that. You know, because growing up, I don't know, I just don't remember like ever thinking about trying to like have that goal of starting freshman year. Making the team obviously was important. And Corey mentioned it, I think, in the last podcast. Corey and Mark and I, literally between the summer of our freshman year, we would probably play in my driveway 4 nights a week, one-on-one.
At least.
At least. And you know, he wouldn't shy away from kick our ass, obviously. So it kind of toughened us up going into our freshman year.
But with that said, every once in a while, one of us would actually win one of those games, and he would get so upset. He would get so mad. Play again. Let's play again. Every once in a while, we get lucky because the ball would bounce our way. One of us would win one of those games. He'd get so mad. But what he said is, Murph wants winners. I remember he told me that in your driving one time, Murph wants winners.
Yep.
So
and we would play till 8 o'clock at night till we couldn't see the hoop.
Until it was dark.
Yeah. And lastly, yes, I dunked in 8th grade.
All right.
Yeah. So just so you know.
You heard it on Big Time. You heard it first here on Big Time. There it is. All right, Corey, can you tell me about some of these battles you and Ryan had in middle school real quick? Tell me how intense were these battles here?
Well, they were battles, but they weren't. I mean, we were starting, once we started having that whole, you know, outside league playing against other teams. I remember because St. Francis is a small school. So when I was in 6th grade, I actually was able to play 7th or 8th grade ball. So I actually played against Laughn. So when it came down to have the traveling team, I almost made the traveling team until they figured out that I was only 6th grade. So then I couldn't play. So then the next year is when we all really started playing with Jeff Pelletier and Robbie McBride and there was just, we actually had a Jeff Netto, you know, we actually Chad Tardy, we actually had a really good diverse team. And speaking of Jeff Pelletier, is coming from Allagash, he transferred to Fort Kent on his 7th grade year. So St. Francis Allagash, you know, he really wasn't all that happy to play with me or against me until I found out later on that his mother's like, listen, you guys could end up being together for, you know, years. You might as well get along with him or else. So, you know, Jeff Pelletier and Jeff Netto, you know, it was, we had a lot of fun. We just, we played hard. Don Dago is our coach. We played hard, and Ryan and I would always, every time we'd ever play against each other, we would never back down, ever. I mean, I didn't want to lose. He didn't want to lose. St. Francis, Fort Kent, my dad's the coach. Come on. Give Corey the ball. I'm going to the hole. I'm shooting the back. I'm shooting from half court. I'm taking it to the hole. Passing is optional if it's a pass break.
Yeah, I didn't really realize that Corey played on that team his 6th grade year. I thought that he was the water boy because his dad was the coach.
Listen, if I got to pull out my statistics from 6th grade,
here we go.
Yeah. We'll save those for a little later. Real quick, I want to ask Corey as well. So obviously you have, you know, a dad who played in high school, uncles who played in high school. You know, how important was it for you growing up to be successful for Fort Kent Community High School to kind of continue that lineage? Was that something that was important to you? Is that something you guys talked about?
Well, Ryan said this earlier is, you know, I first started, my first actual game was going to watch my uncle, Roderick, play in high school. That was my first actual high school game. And then Benita Martin, who was right down the road from me, they had a great team with Neely. So that's when I really started going to watch, you know, basketball games at the high school level. And then because my parents realized that I couldn't just stay in the cage the rest of my life. They realized I got to start branching out and seeing other ways to play basketball. So, and then once we started watching Benita, that's when I really, you know, that's when Travis came up, and that's when I really started, you know, and playing the traveling team and then watching Travis play that night. And I was there for that open game. So that really was one of the games that really, really, really got me into the, because I knew Laughn already. So, and I saw him on the court too, and I'm like, I want to play with him again. I just want to do it. I just want to, all get together and just go for it and I heard the stories. Like my dad, because my mom had all the paper clippings from his days playing with Tom. So I saw those, and just looking back in the day, looking at them making the tournament and not seeing them make the tournament after that, I wanted to make the tournament. I wanted to be that guy. I thought we had a pretty good crew that, and at that point in time, we all started kind of bonding too, kind of slowly but surely between soccer and, all these other, sports. And actually the first time I ever even talked to Murph, I knew who Murph was, but I was, I think it was an 8th grade scrimmage we had with like Fort Fairfield or something. And he came up to me, he says, and now I'm in 8th grade, he says, how tall are you going to be? And I said, well, the doctor said I might hit 6'3". He's like, boy, I hope so. I never quite made it that high. I don't quite, he put 6'3" on our program, but that's because I had the pump sneakers. I just pumped them up a little bit. And, I was actually only made it to like 6'1.5", but whatever. Yeah. I like being 6'3" in the books.
Yeah. Tommy, what Corey's talking about, him watching that Holton game, Travis's team experiencing the culture change. When those underclassmen, when those 8th graders saw that game, all of Fort Kent basketball changed. Everybody had different and higher aspirations. It wasn't play soccer, win that championship, and then let's do something in the winter. It was, let's play soccer, win that championship. Now let's play basketball and win that championship. So
the crowd was deafening.
It was one of the best. I've coached in a lot of games, and that was one of the most rewarding and fulfilling games I've ever experienced. I celebrated like a wild man. You got to talk big, and you got to keep your team high, and you got to keep them focused. And in the back of your head, you're going, Jesus, I hope they make it. God, I hope we do this right. Boy, we better get this done, And then you win in overtime with Kerry Michaud blocking a shot, cupping it in his forearm and landing, and the buzzer goes off. He just drops the ball, and then wham. Yeah. So that right there, that was the rocket starting to take off in the basketball program right there.
Things obviously got better, which we'll get to here. We're going to kind of highlight some of the milestones and stuff like that. But what I want to do real quick is, Murph, I want to get, you mentioned that you saw some of these guys, in middle school when they were younger and stuff like that. You kind of kept your eye on them. But I want to know your first impression of each of these players, your first day in practice with them. So what's like your earliest recollection or the thing you remember most from each of these guys from as far back as being their coach? It could be a trait. It could be, maybe he's better at this than I thought. We'll start with Travis. What's the first thing you remember about Travis going all the way back the first time you had him in practice?
Well, it was pretty obvious that Travis loved basketball, and he was hyper. He was excited to play basketball that year. I didn't know the history. I knew that these guys got along, and I knew that from talking to other people that they played together quite a bit. The other thing about Travis was he practiced hard. He could play. You could post him up. You could ask him to score from the perimeter. He was pretty versatile, but the bottom line was he was competitive as hell. And the other thing was what Travis said, the rest of the boys followed. When Travis was their leader, whether he knew it or not, he was their leader. If anything was going to happen, it had to run through Travis, and Travis had to accept it and lead the rest to it. So that was the first impression of him. I knew he was the key to success. If I could get him to understand, sticking with game plans, not abandoning the ship, don't panic because you're down 6 points. Just because you're down 6 points doesn't mean you're going to lose by 30. It means you're down 6 points. And, stick to the game plan. And anyway, so once he learned to do that, his crew stepped in line. That his year, of all the years I've coached, and I've had some good years, that year, as little as it seems to have accomplished, like we were maybe 7 and 9, or whatever it was, when we made the tournament, and we hadn't been there in 17 years, we had 3 games where we lost by 30, and those same teams we beat later. So that team was the epitome of paying attention and getting better. You can pull off a 30-point swing. You can upset somebody that's not paying attention, But to do it 3 times in a year is not. It becomes not an upset, but reality. I mean, they played up to their potential, and about halfway through that season, Travis caught on, and when he caught on and he started paying attention, and he became my voice on the floor, everybody stepped in line. I really, it was one of the most rewarding seasons I've ever had because of how much, just to see their smiles after not being in a tournament for 17 years. Lonnie was, like I said, when I met Lonnie, he was 5'0". I'd seen him around. I'd seen him come and hang out, watch the end of my college practices once in a while. He and his dad, Aaron, would wander in and sit down and watch practice towards the end of the practice. Again, it was competitive nature that I noticed. Good skills, not outstanding skills right then, but a good competitive nature, a willingness to work, a willingness to learn, listen, do what he was asked to do, play his role for a while, but competitive spirit, and leadership skills. Even at 5'0", you could see that sooner or later he was gonna lead a team. That was obvious that he's got leadership skills, had leadership skills. Ryan and Corey were like a duo. Now, a lot of coaches kind of, they second guess themselves. Do I start a freshman? And I said, I'm going to start 2 freshmen. and the honest to God truth is I didn't hesitate, because in all the drills, Ryan would always finish 1 or 2 in the guard drills. Corey was always the best rebounder in every drill. I mean, so those 2 freshmen earned their way. Anybody who was an upperclassman had a chance to outplay them in drills and to show their skills and to pay attention to the offensive flow. These guys came in dead set on contributing as freshmen, not just making the team, but contributing. And again, vicious competitive spirit, and because they were young and they were freshmen, they probably listened harder and paid attention more. But did their things as freshmen really, really well. I mean, Corey was the best rebounder on our team as a freshman. And that wasn't always because he could jump higher or whatever, but he always found he carved out his space. And he was always carving out space even before shots went. That's what I try to tell people about being a good rebounder. If you look for your space after the shot's up, you don't get it. You carve out your space. If you know who's shooting on your team and when they're supposed to be shooting, you should start carving out your space. He had that knack from his freshman year on. Ryan had just shot so many shots that as a freshman, he was strong, he was physical, maybe could have been more aggressive, had to have his butt kicked once in a while to be more aggressive, to attack the hoop, maybe more aggressive once in a while to shoot when he was open, but had a sweet jump shot. I mean, he had a very classic jump shot. I mean, he was a prototypical athlete. You just look at him and said, that kid's an athlete, So, hey, listen, I was a blessed man. I walked across the street. I had a great bunch of guys that I went through with college. I walked across the street and I ended up with another great bunch of kids, a little younger, but all of it turned out to be very rewarding.
Corey, I got a quick question for you, Corey, based off what Coach just said. So he kind of mentioned being a good rebounder, carving out your space, knowing your teammates when they're shooting, getting in position to get the rebound. It seems like I always hear people say you like to pad your stats and miss shots on purpose. But were you just cleaning up Ryan's misses this whole time because you knew him so well from the time you guys spent together? Is that what really happened, or what?
Oh no, I just played with a bunch of guys that love to shoot. You know what I mean? So I knew that when the ball was coming up the court, especially around the fast break, who knows who was going to stop and pop. So yeah, I mean, if I'm running through the paint, you just got to be prepared. You got to see the guys coming behind you. You got to get there and being undersized, like I said before, being undersized, even though sometimes I actually get the rebound, doesn't mean I had an easy putback because I had guys much taller than me, and my hang time was like 0.002. So I wasn't getting up there and putting it right next to the rim. You know what I mean? I had to do what I had to do to get it back up there, get the ball back, and reposition myself again to put it back in. So yeah, did I miss some bunnies? Yes, but that's because I couldn't jump.
Corey was the master of the triple pump fake. Up, up, up. Five times sometimes before he'd go up. And then he'd go up,
like I
and he'd
said,
get slammed to the floor, and he always made it look like somebody had killed him.
Hey, sometimes it was one ball fake and two head fakes, and then he'd go up.
But with that said, that's why I started doing that little jump hook in the middle of the paint my junior senior year. That's when I started getting a little more points because I was starting to put my body. I was bigger and stronger, so I was able to put my body between people and just do a little, left or right, catch over taller guys.
Left?
My freshman and sophomore year, I was getting beat up all the time, but that's when I really started hitting the gym and I got bigger. So that's when I was able to actually, my hang time went from .002 to .006. So, I was able to actually get a little more height on my shot.
All right,
And now, Corey would never win a foot race, but you never seen a guy get a rebound defensively, throw the outlet, and fill that wing any faster than Corey Thibodeau. I literally.
Hey, listen, you can ask anybody. You can ask Mins and anybody else. I was the king of the far lofts when we do it in soccer. I always won that race.
I want to stick on the topic of first impressions here. So I'm going to go back to Travis. So there was an overlap with all of you guys. So you guys pretty much all, for the most part, played with each other at some point. So Coach gave us his first impression of you guys from first practices as far back as he can remember. Trav, you would have been the upperclassman here. What's your first impression of Laughn? I mean, I know you guys knew each other, but how about when it came to actually being in practice, your first practice together or your first year together? What's your first impression of Laughn? Maybe something he did better than you might have expected, or maybe something he didn't do as good as you expected. First impressions of Laughn.
The whole time I was listening to Coach, I was thinking about that, and I thought about this about Lonnie many, many times. In that, you got to understand that Lonnie was coming in as a varsity player sophomore year with 11 other seniors, and I would probably say 8 of those seniors made varsity the year before. Okay, and Lonnie started, and nobody balked about it. Nobody grumbled about it. Nobody bitched about it. Nobody complained. Nobody gave him a hard time about it. Nothing. And there's one reason for that, is the boy earned it. He earned everybody's respect because he could play. He could flat out play. And he, even as a sophomore, Lonnie was a leader. He truly was. And I appreciate all the kind words that Coach said about me, but I think about it and I think about how that program had continued success. I think it had a ton to do with Lonnie's ability to be a leader. He was as a sophomore, he was a good player. And there was no doubt that he was better than 8, 9 of those seniors. And he deserved to start. But as he got older, his junior year, his senior year, I mean, he went off the charts as a basketball player. In my mind, I remember watching Lonnie after I graduated thinking, holy shit, this kid is good. And his IQ, his understanding of the game, and his ability to lead, not only by how he played, but also the way he communicated and the way he expected out of you. I remember him being a sophomore and getting into practice, and Lonnie expected you to be a good player. And if you weren't pulling your weight, he'd say something or he'd come at you. And he wouldn't back down at all. So when I think back to it, even my sophomore year going into varsity, and I was starting over juniors and seniors, I was given a lot of shit, a lot. And it really messed with my head as a player. And I think back to Lonnie, and I don't remember guys giving Lonnie any shit at all because the boy could just play, and we all respected him for that. And it was obvious, when Coach said that he was going to start Ryan and Corey, yeah, no shit. Coach didn't care about what year you were or how old you were or how much experience you had. If you deserved to start, you were going to start. And that's not always the way basketball was leading up to Merv getting there. It was a little bit more of, okay, we got seniors that have been here for 3 years. Okay, he's going to start, kind of thing. And that's just not, to me, a winning mentality. And you're not going to build a program that way. But as soon as guys know that every spot's open and all you got to do is fight for it and compete every day and be one of the best players in practice every day, you're going to have a chance to start with Coach Merv. And it was obvious he did that with Lonnie, and everyone respected it. And I think from that moment on, seeing Ryan and Corey come up, knowing that shit, they're going to be two of the top 3 players on the court. They need to start. And I mean, it's obvious that nobody was upset with that move, right? Because look at all the success they had. I mean, 1,000-point scores, you know. And I think that's just coach's philosophy about it. You know, I'm not here to play favorites. I'm here to put the best players out on the court. So I think back to Lonnie, and that's my biggest thing is that even as a sophomore, even as a senior, looking at Lonnie as a sophomore, I viewed him as a leader, honestly, because the boy could play. And it wasn't hard to just be his teammate and play alongside him. So Lonnie, that's my first impression. I knew Lonnie was going to be very good, just growing up with his brother and playing with him. And Lonnie never cried. I mean, it didn't matter how much shit we gave him. He didn't cry. He didn't back down. And he'd just come at you. And you could see his face would get tight a little bit. And you're like, oh shit, Lonnie's pissed. He's not going to say any more than that because he knows if he's going to run his mouth, he's going to get beat down. But he would tense up a little bit, and you'd see his friggin' face just tighten up a little bit, and you're like, oh shit, watch out, here comes Lonnie, you know. And he just never backed down. So him stepping in that sophomore year, I think it was an easy transition for everybody, and made our team as good as we were. I really believe that.
Arlon, same question for you. So you got to answer. Actually, first impressions on 3 guys. So same question for you, and we'll kind of go through this a little bit quicker because I want to get to a couple more topics. But your first impression of Travis, obviously you knew him, but maybe first impression in practice with him, and then your first impressions of Ryan and Corey when they come along, what you remember most about those guys.
All right, so I'll start with Travis. My first impression of him definitely wasn't in high school basketball. It was hanging out with him. I was the tag along growing up, and you know, when Murph says, "Hey, he's the leader out there," when Travis would tell you to do something, you would just get on board and do it. You know, I remember that when Travis goes, "Hey, jump in my Z71, and we're gonna go jump the tracks in Eagle Lake," and I just did. You know, Travis was a guy that I followed and I looked up to. He was obviously one of my brother's best friends, but you know, he's right. I was with him in the yard, and you know what? They were going to beat on me, and you really couldn't say anything, or they weren't going to let me tag along anymore. So I just kept my mouth shut and I played, and that was part of the reason that when I got into practice that I was able to just play. I'd say in our practices, you know, similar to what Murph said, you know, early on, Travis is so competitive. Sometimes he'd not necessarily lose track of the game plan, but get so caught up in like, hey, we just failed on that play, or we did really well on that play, and he was really high and he was really low, and when he became even keeled and was able to keep that competitive spirit even all the time, that's when he was at his best. And Murph's right. I mean, he was truly our leader that year. You know, because he got so fired up, he had so much passion, he had so much spirit that it was hard not to follow a guy like that. You know, win or lose, you were going to go into battle and you were going to follow Travis. I'm gonna talk about Ryan and Corey a little bit together. I mean, they're much different players, but when they were coming into high school, I was already kind of friends with these guys. You know, Mark Graham was my coach my freshman year, and so you know, I'd actually go out to Ryan's house every once in a while and play with them too, but not as much as those guys played. Ryan was extremely athletic. Again, you know, Duncan in 8th grade, that wasn't a myth. I mean, he was coming in and he was super athletic. Murph's right. Sometimes he needed to shoot a little bit more. Probably didn't realize what his true potential was, or what his true meaning to the team was his freshman year. But he was a guy that really took a lot of the pressure off me from the guard spot. Could shoot it very well, and you know, the older he got, when he started to go to the rim, he was tough to guard, and he had to be guarded with 2 people. But first impression was that he was going to be you know, a hell of an asset, and you know, as long as we shared the ball and each got some shots up, I thought we were going to be, you know, very good. Corey, on the other hand, much different player, but just as valuable. He was going to go in and bang, and both of them were physically strong as freshmen, so the physicality of the varsity game wasn't beyond them as freshmen. But again, when you're a freshman and you're going up against some juniors and seniors that have been there before, you just haven't been in those type of atmospheres. But Corey was fearless. As a freshman, he was going to get in there and he was going to thrash around and do whatever he could against the older players. That didn't matter. Neither one of them were intimidated. But one of the things that Corey really did well is he was going to bite your arm off to win. And if it was a ball that was tied up, he was not going to let go. If the other guy was stronger, then Corey was going to get thrown around with the ball too. He wasn't letting go. So I appreciated both of their competitive spirit. Actually, all three of them. Competitive is really the link that ties them all, and I think that's something that we all had in common. And so, three great teammates for me right here.
All right, Ryan, your turn. So Laughn would have been the upperclassman. You mentioned you guys kind of knew each other when you were coming in as a freshman, but your first impression of Laughn in practice, maybe just something that he did a little bit better than you expected, or maybe a little bit more intense than you were expecting.
Well, it was no surprise to me. Obviously, like Laughn and I go back as well. Like I've known Laughn. I knew Laughn years before I got into high school, and I knew how competitive he was. I knew how good he was. I knew how good of an athlete he was. I think everyone talks about Lawn's stature, right? Sophomore year, being 5'0" and weighing $110 soaking wet. But he is obviously was an unbelievable mentor in terms of how competitive he was. Like everyone on this panel will talk about how I was passive, and I think Laughn helped me understand, like, you have to be aggressive, right? Because he wouldn't back down from anybody. Like, that's the one thing that I learned about Laughn really quick is, like, it didn't matter what his stature was. It didn't matter who he was going against. He believed he was better than that person. And I think that's, like, it's all about confidence, and that's what he taught me kind of coming up as a freshman. And that's what I really appreciated about him. My freshman year, being that mentor, going against guys that were bigger in stature, more athletic, he would not back down. And that's a testament to him. Like, I think it's the same with Corey, and we'll get into Corey in a second, because Corey and I, we got stories, but that's one of the things I really appreciated about him. Coming as a freshman, right? You don't realize, you try to like contribute, you try to be as much of a leader as you can. But your mindset and mentality is just not there. You're still young. You're just coming out of, junior high basketball. You don't realize, like, I guess, your potential at the time. But he made me realize, and I think he helped both Corey and I transition. And the transition was a lot easier playing with someone like Laughn, for sure. Great leadership skills.
All right, and Corey, same question for you. Your first impressions of Laughn, the upperclassman, who would have been the guy when you got there. What's the first thing that comes to mind for you?
Well, I mean, it's pretty simple. I mean, like I said, I was there at the Holton game, even though Ryan wasn't. I was there, and I watched it, and I saw Laughn play on the court, and I saw Travis, and I saw that whole game. So right then and there, maybe he was only 5'1", 5'2", but when you saw him and you saw him on the court or saw him on the soccer field, his mouth made him about 5'10". So he had no problem telling you if you're doing something wrong or if you're doing something right. That was the way it was, but that's okay, because when I walked into it, I knew. But the thing was good about him was if you did something good, he had no problem telling you you're doing something good as well. So he wasn't always giving you shit. He was just he was a leader. And I said this before. When he walked into the court with Laughn, it was nowhere to go. I mean, he directed the whole team. He made the calls on the court. It was either go or we run ice. He was always the sergeant on the team. He led us
Coach
into
on the
wins.
court. Coach
Yeah,
on the
he
court.
led us to wins, and it was just it was awesome to play with him.
All right, so I want to bring Coach back in here. So real quickly, if you could, these guys cover a 5-year span, starting with Travis' senior year, going to Ryan and Corey's senior year. So if you could, I just want you to trace what the program did in those 5 years. So doesn't need to be wins, losses, but where you guys finished, how far you got in the playoffs type thing. If we can get quickly through that, and then I'm going to have a follow-up question to that. So we'll let you kind of tell the story of those 5 years.
All right. Year number one, like I said, was one of the most rewarding coaching years of my life, because the group was so appreciative and so excited about getting the band going. We made that a goal, and we reached that goal. And that Holton game inspired the program. It changed the program. Travis obviously was the leader, and later on became an assistant coach. I think I hired him at the junior high. Then he became my assistant coach, and then he got his own coaching job. I mean, that was all. You could see that he had his passion for basketball anyway. But that year was rewarding. We made it to the tournament. We made it, I think, 6 consecutive years after that, 4 for sure, 5 years, and then seven times, and we were 7 times in a row where we at least made postseason. Lonnie's group, his first, I think, we always seemed to lose in the semi to the team that went on to win the Easter. So, I mean, we didn't, and those games are always a play or 2 away, you know. That was frustrating that we'd win the quarter, lose the semi. That was maddening. But I think Lonnie had a team where they were 15-3. I think that second year, is that true? 15-3 when you were a junior, or was that?
No, my junior year. I don't remember the record. We ended up losing to Rockland, I think, that year. And
yeah, and the guy Geisler set a record for free throws made.
That was my senior year. That was Camden.
Oh yeah, okay.
That was in the semis my senior year. The junior year, that was Rockland. We lost by 5 to Rockland.
Yeah. But I mean, the tally that I have is a 70 wins, 30 losses in that span of games, and that includes 18 regular season games, that's tournament games, and invitational tournaments that used to take place during somewhere around Christmas, during the Christmas break. So Corey, Ryan, Travis, Lonnie, they set the bar high, and it was a great stretch. I've told people how blessed I am. I mean, I walked across the street and found a package full of talented athletes. I left a bunch of talented athletes. I've just been lucky. Everywhere I've gone, I've had good people. Allagash, great people. Fort Kent, the college, great people, great, and I mean, there's endless stories. I mean, there's endless stories about these guys and the different heroics that they played. And I mean, I could tell you about games that Travis. I mean, we're in Madawaska, and Travis, we were down 2 points, I think. They had the ball. All they do is inbound, and the game is over. Travis steals the ball on the inbound, and the guy was so frustrated, he shoved Travis. So Travis stole it. He was going to fall out of bounds, and the guy shoved him and got an intentional foul. So we ended up making free throws. He missed a free throw on purpose, and Kerry Michaud rebounded it, scored it, and we won it. And in the end, we needed it because we needed that every point, you know.
That story's true, Coach, too. I bet you those younger guys over there are like, yeah, bullshit. I'm calling bullshit. He missed that.
I've heard that story.
That is the truth. We used to run this in practice. Kerry could jump out of the gym, and it was like a flash, and he was at the rim. Yeah. Even though he didn't look it, but he was. And we do this back then. You'd line up at your free throw line, and I always felt the second guy had the better rebounding position than the first guy, you know. So the offensive team, we were taking the free throw. Kerry was going to have a better chance of rebounding because that guy was going to step back and try to seal Kerry off. And when we practice this, Kerry would either sidestep him or spin behind him and then end up in front of him. And I told Kerry, I made the first one. I told Kerry, I said, I'm going to miss this one. You go get it. And I don't know if I can really say that I missed it that perfectly on purpose, but he got it. He got it and put it back up and in. Crazy stuff, man.
Yeah. Then, Lonnie, in a game where I talk too much during timeouts, the referees call us out. He looks over his shoulder. He sees that they're allowing the inbounds. He runs from the huddle, dives, slides, and just before the rolling ball is to be picked up by the inbounds player, Lonnie grabs it, rolls over, and calls timeout. So, and 4 of us, including the coach, are still standing on the sidelines watching Lon. So that was against Limestone. Remember that, Lonnie?
Right. We pulled that one off. We almost scored 100 that game.
Yeah. Yeah. And then Ryan's down to Calais, and Mark Graham's the assistant coach, and Ryan hit like 5 threes in a row. And I know that Mark Graham was making more noise than anybody in the gym about Ryan scoring 5 threes in a row, asking somebody if they thought maybe they should guard that freshman. Yeah, maybe you ought to guard that. Yeah. And I can remember a timeout with Corey in Presque Isle where we loved to play against Presque Isle. I loved to play against Presque Isle because in camps when I was at UMFK, I heard so many stories about how they abused Fort Kent. Presque Isle would brag and make fun. So when I ended up coaching Fort Kent, what I wanted to do is shut up the people that made those things happen, you know? And so I can remember that during one of the timeouts, Corey had gotten like 2 or 3 rebounds in a row, thrown the outlets, beat the guy down the floor, scored the layup, stole the ball, got a layup, defended at the other end, another rebound, throws an outlet, so he does that he scores about 8 points in a minute. And most of it is all in transition and just outworking people. And so I remember Timmy Prescott during his timeout, he was yelling so loud that everybody in the gym stopped to listen. He says, "Can anybody guard that goddamn 32? Is anybody ever going to catch up with him? He's not really that fast, you know." That he was out of his tree about how Corey was kicking their ass, just plain kicking their ass. So.
I'm going to tell that funny story, Coach, as you referenced that Calais game our freshman year. It was, you talk about freshmen coming in and having to grow up really quick. It was our first road game freshman year. We jump on a bus Saturday morning and have a 5-hour bus ride down to Calais. And at the time, Calais had some good teams, right? And I think Calais beat up on Fort Kent a couple of the previous years. And I know we had finally gotten to beat them. I think Travis's senior year, you might have beat Calais. It was a big win for you that year. Yeah. And so we go down to Calais. It was a hostile environment, and Laughn ended up fouling out of that game, and I'll never forget this. Laughn fouls out in the 4th quarter, and I had to run the point. And Corey, you know where this is going because this is the end.
Went to triple overtime.
We call a timeout. We run a play, and Corey is the last guy we called to shoot that ball. And this is like we're down 3 with 10 seconds to go. Corey catches the ball at the top of the key. And he's looking to pass. Nobody's open, so he's like, I'll shoot it. And it goes off the backboard and in at the buzzer to go into overtime.
Great play, Coach. Great play.
It was so funny, too, because all I could hear was Laughn yell backboard.
Backboard swift. And we ended up winning that game, and Corey and I played a huge role in that. And I remember coming off the court, and Laughn was so pumped. We're freshmen, and Laughn's like, "That's your effing initiation, buddy." And, that's how it kind of all started, right? And it was the best bus ride home ever.
So I want to ask you guys each a question here. So basically, you all had something to do with pushing the program to new heights. Starting with Travis and his group getting to Bangor. On you guys keep moving it forward. Ryan and Corey, you guys have some of the best teams that Fort Kent's probably ever seen. So I want to ask you guys, what's the game you think of during your time that kind of pushed the program forward? And so, Trav, I know you already mentioned the Holton game, so I want you to not pick the Holton game. Maybe pick the game that led you guys to win the Holton game. What's the one you look back on that's kind of like the game for you guys, if it wasn't that Holton game that kind of pushed you guys in the right direction?
Yeah. So coach made a remark about Presque Isle and how we were always, getting our asses kicked by them, and they let us all know it all the time. But so we got smoked by them by 30 something down in Presque Isle. And we ended up by beating them at home. But I can remember, I can't remember if it was the night before, but it was shortly before we played that game. Coach had a scenario for everything. There was a play, a scenario, defense, a scheme for every scenario that he could think of. Okay. And throughout the season, he just slowly started to introduce more and more to us. And I remember leading up to that Presque Isle game, we were in practice and he had this last second full court play. And what it basically was, the inbounder would take out the ball full court. There'd be a player out by half court that would get a back screen heading towards our hoop. And the inbounder had to throw the ball to the rim and the offensive player that just got the back screen would catch as an alley-oop almost, because it was like seconds to go. So there's no time to catch, dribble, shoot, any of that. It was one of these last second plays. We're going to call a timeout. You know, we got to go the length of the court. We got to find the guy that's going to throw the ball to the rim, full court, and then we got to get a guy that's going to be able to catch it and finish in air. So he's running this play, and he's just kind of going. He's picked a couple guys to do the offensive player, a couple guys to be the screeners that he thinks could get the job done, and then a couple guys to be the inbounder. And he has me being the inbounder, and I'm throwing this damn ball, and I'm throwing it everywhere, and I can't get it anywhere. I mean, I can't even get it to the bucket, okay? I can reach it, but I'm throwing it off the ceiling. I'm throwing it out of bounds. It's hitting the other wall, and I'm getting pissed, and I'm really getting pissed. And I can remember he took me out and somebody else to do it, and I was like, when the hell are we ever going to do this anyway? You know, this is stupid. Why are we wasting so much time on this? And he just said, you know, and Ryan Raymond came in, and he started really giving me shit and riding me hard. And it just pissed me off even more. And he pulls me over and he says, Travis, this is going to be the difference between us winning a game and us losing a game. If we can get this down, whether it's you or it's somebody else, it doesn't matter, but we got to do this. We got to figure it out. So anyway, I get back into getting those reps and trying it. And long story short, we're in Presque Isle, halftime. Coach calls a timeout. There's seconds to go at half. He calls a timeout. They just scored. Okay. We got the ball on our opposite end line, and he comes up and get in the huddle, and there's, I don't know, 1 point something seconds. Okay. A second maybe, whatever. And so we get in the huddle, and we're like, Coach, what are we going to do? He says, the play that we ran the other night, where we're going to throw that home run pass, this is what we're going to do. We're going to run it right now. We're going to score off this. We're like, holy shit, you know, kind of like, well, okay. And he got Aaron Berthiaume was going to be the guy going to catch the ball and score. And I don't remember who came and set the back screen. So they came up and they put some token half court, you know, full court, 3/4 court pressure. They did guard the inbounder and threw the ball. Aaron caught the ball right at the rim. I mean, Aaron could get up, caught the ball right inside the bucket at the rim, scored as the buzzer went off. Okay. And the place went nuts. And we went running in the locker room, and that play flipping worked. Okay. And everyone got in the locker room, excited as shit. And we're going in, and we're up by 4 or something like that, the Presque Isle going into halftime. And coach just calms us all down. It's like that, and explains that's why we do things in practice the way we do them. Now, the game's not done. You got to come out and you got to win the second half, and we're going to beat these suckers. Okay. And sure enough, we did. And I can remember my senior year, like that was the turning point for me. Like, okay, we're good. We're not the shit that we've always been. We're not the laughing stock of the valley. Not talking about the county. We're not the laughing stock of the valley anymore. Okay. We're good. We can play. So to me, that Presque Isle game, and just the things that coach would do, and you as a player, you didn't know at the time the purpose and the meaning behind it, but he never left anything out. He always, if we were going to lose, it wasn't because we weren't prepared. We were always going to be prepared. And if it came down to execution, we were prepared. If we didn't execute, then we lost. Okay. But we were always prepared. But that Presque Isle game, without a doubt in my mind, after getting I think it was 36 points down in Presque Isle, and they had a kid, Heath Savage. He was a hell of a shooter. He'd get down to the Boston Garden, do that hot shot competition every year. Hell of a player. We had a game plan for him. Shut him down, kept him under like 15 points for the game. Pissed off the whole game. But we won that game. And that, aside from the Holton game, was definitely a turning point for me.
All right, Laughn, how about you? What was it the game that kind of pushed the program in the right direction? Maybe like the game you guys might have lost before, or someone that sticks out that kind of keep propelling things along?
Yeah, I've this one's been mentioned before, but I'm going to mention it again. It's that good for us. I think, you know, we played Limestone my junior year. We played them down at their place. You know, I mean, we averaged 70 in the mid 70s. We had a number of games where we scored in the 90s, and we were in the 80s a lot. I mean, but we lost down at Limestone, you know, by about 20, and we still scored in the 80s. You know, they scored 102, and we had Limestone at our place, and that's the year they went to the state final. Then you know, played TJ Cowet's Winthrop team and lost. But Limestone was loaded. They had Tony Tobin. We're at our place. It's a huge game, and We're up 1 at the time, and Murph calls for 4 corners with about 3 minutes left, and we went right into it, and we just knocked down free throws to ice it, and they were, Murph called that play ice, but they were a team that they weren't used to not having the ball back quick. They wanted to score quickly. They wanted to get up and down, and when we were hanging on to the ball and they couldn't get it from us, they just kind of panicked and started to foul, and so we actually scored 97 points that game, and we're able to put that game away. But again, you're playing against a team that you'd gone to their place and they sort of handled you. And then late in the season, when we needed that one for the heel points and they came to our place, we were able to kind of put it together. And again, Ryan and Corey, you talk about the growth. I mean, they're freshmen on that team. They're playing against seniors on the other team who go to a state final, and we're able to hang on to the ball and make free throws in difficult situations. So that one for me is kind of an iconic game for us.
All right. How about for you? Is there a game that kind of sticks out where looking back on it, you're like, okay, like that was a big one for us. That kind of showed us that we could do good things. We could win big games. We could battle it out. Is there one that sticks out?
I mean, yeah, not to sound redundant, but, as a freshman, we were still trying to prove ourselves. Fort Kent was kind of coming back around, put themselves on the map as like a basketball school. I'll agree with Laughn because I remember that's the one, other than the really bad losses freshman year, I remember those really well. The biggest win, I think, was that Limestone win. I think, we were trying to be really competitive in the county. We were always going against, the Caribou and Presque Isles. I don't think we beat Caribou and Presque Isle my freshman year. They were just that much better than us. I think, going back to what Laughn says, I remember going down to Limestone on a Friday night. They had a really good team, really senior-laden team. They were athletic from their point guard all the way to their center, and they just killed us down in Limestone. And I remember, and we talked about this last podcast, I remember like the practice before that game, the preparation. We knew we were going to be in the game, and we prepared for it. And like Laughn said, we ran up and down with them. It was probably the first time, going back to my entire 4 years, I feel like the gym was always packed. Both sides, standing room only. I feel like that was the first time I really felt it. Like that one game, I think, while the Caribou games were really good, the Presque Isle games were good my freshman year, I think the Limestone game, was the first time we really executed and, we came into our own, I think, that game because they were good. I mean, like I said, they were athletic, they were senior laden, they were experienced, and it's funny. We practiced ice and we executed ice and we won that game. And that's the one game I remember. Now, moving forward, I think after our freshman year, I think we were actually we felt like we could play with anybody at that point. We were still struggling against the bigger schools, but I think. Beating Presque Isle. I think we lost to Presque Isle our sophomore year at Presque Isle, and after that we didn't lose to Presque Isle again my entire career. So I think that Presque Isle game my sophomore year was kind of resembled the same thing in beating that bigger school and being able to compete. And that's where it all started. I think after that, we can talk about games, but those are all games we should have won. You know what I mean? So that's where it all started for me.
All right. How about for you, Corey? Same question. What's that game that you remember that just kind of pushed the program along that kind of stands out?
Well, I actually got 2 little quick stories. There's the one game we played as a freshman, because I'll reiterate with what Ryan and Laughn said. Freshman year, we were going up and down. We played good against the big teams, and then the teams that we should beat, we struggled because we're just trying to learn our identity. So there's 2 games. One was in Van Buren, where we should have beat Van Buren all day long. We're playing in Van Buren, and at halftime, we were losing. And Murph comes in, and he's so, he just has that intensity, slams the ball, and looks at me and Ryan and says, "You're not playing 8th grade basketball anymore. Take care of the basketball."
Oh, hey, thanks for bringing that one up, Corey. We know how that one ended.
But the other one, so that was a learning experience. But then not too far later on down the road, not to bring up Callis again, but we're playing Callis at home, and then Murph gives the old 5-finger speech because we should have beat Callis too. We're going to halftime, losing at Callis, And I don't know if I was in the right place at the wrong time or if I was sitting because I was too close to the chalkboard or the first seat me walking through the door to the locker room. But Murph walks in all angry, kicks somebody's gym bag across the room, and then starts giving us a speech and goes, "What's this? What's this?" And no one says a word. He says, "These are 5 individual players." And he comes up to me and goes, "Poke, poke, 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 poke." Starts poking me in the shoulder. "Does that hurt? Does that hurt?" I said, no, not really. Not trying to say anything too loudly. No. And then he goes, "You put 5 individual players together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5." And he goes, bang! my whole shoulder goes like this. It says, "Now, did that hurt?" I said, "A little bit." He's like, "This is how you play as a team." And so from that point on, I think that's when, as a team, our freshman year and Laughn's junior year, I think that's when we really started to gel together more because we actually did come back and win that game. And then we started playing better. And because our freshman year, the first start of it, we were just, all new to each other. So we didn't really know. I mean, Laughn was running the court, but we still didn't know how to feed off each other. So eventually it came around.
All right. I want to bring Murph in real quick for a question as well, but I just want to say I got 2 stories I want to tell. So at this time, I was a kid. I was probably like 6 or 7 years old. There's two things I remember from this time period. One of them was Pee Wee basketball, performing at halftime of one of Laughn Berthiaume's high school games, and just remember the place being packed. Little James Harvey was on the sideline with a bunch of girls. I got camcorder footage of it. I remember that. I just remember that being a moment that sticks out in my mind and just the environment. And then the second story would have been Ryan and Corey's senior year. My dad took me to a game, and there was no place to park because it was packed. So we had to park on Pleasant Street. And then at that time, too, they used to lock up the hallways, like those little fences. They kind of close up and chain up. And we had to get into the front door of the building and crawl through one of those to actually get in there because the place was packed. So that's what I remember about. That's what I remember about Fort County High School basketball. So, Coach, I want to ask you, looking back on it, is there a moment where you kind of look back and you say, okay, the program is where it should be, whether it's fans on the crowd, Mr. Vonderheid, I think was his name, the band director, the band just booming, cheerleaders, during your time looking back, is there a moment that kind of sticks out? Yes, this is where it should be. The program is where I envisioned it being.
There were several moments like that, but I know that game you were talking about, that was the Caribou game, and people were trying to get through doors that were locked. There were so many people in there that there was moisture on the floor. Ryan actually slipped and fell down in the second half because people were opening that door trying to get cooled off, and it was just causing moisture at the end of the door. Anyway, I don't know if there's any one game. There were so many games that were I'd call program wins, and it always seemed to be when the pressure was on, we always performed. When we really had to have it, we brought it. When I asked for something, I usually got it from people, I think the Holton game told me that the program was going to move now. The program was going to make it. Travis's crew, they set the platform up. These guys jumped up on the platform and then brought it up a couple more rungs afterwards. But if there was one game that completed the culture change, it was the Holton game. It was because you talk about kids that came to that game. The gym was packed. It was meaningful. It was exciting. Matt Rosignol, every time we meet, talks about that Holton game. He was the coach of the Holton team then. He says, "I still remember you doing the dead bug." He calls it the dead bug. I was celebrating. I tackled Brent Marquis. I let him go, and I laid on the floor on my back, and I was just kicking and screaming, and he called that the dead bug. So Matt always reminds me of doing the dead bug. But
Coach, you remember where we ended up in the locker room?
Showers. In the showers.
Wasn't
with
that
our
the
clothes
best?
on.
Everyone was dressed. Everyone had their uniforms on. Coaches in his tie, everything, and we're in the showers. All the showers are running. Everyone's just screaming. We're going to, and Murph started it. We're going to the show. And next thing you know, all of us were screaming that we're going to the show. It was something I'll never forget. Never forget.
All right. I want to do some rapid fire with you guys here. So I'm just going to ask a question. We'll just go through everybody just real quick. Answer that comes to mind. So start with Travis. During your times, favorite opposing school to go play at, whether it's the gym, fans, crowd. What was the one place you enjoyed playing at?
Madawaska.
All right.
Oh yeah, Madawaska.
Lon, how about you?
Does the Bangor Auditorium count?
Yeah, I mean, we'll exclude. I think that's a given. So we'll exclude the auditorium.
All right. You know what? I gotta go Madawaska or Caribou. Those are the two.
All right. Ryan, how about you?
Yeah, that's a tough one. There's so many good ones. Obviously love playing against the Class A schools, like competing with them. I can't pick one. They're all good. Caribou's great. Presque Isle's even better. Madawaska's great too, because I don't think we lost to them after our freshman, Corey and my freshman year. And they were always a Valley rival, so it was always fun to go beat them down.
All right, Corey, how about you?
Yeah, Presque Isle's definitely. I loved playing against Matt Cassidy and getting his goat. And yeah, I like playing at Callis too. Actually, I was a big fan of the Callis gym.
All right, and Coach, how about for you? What was your favorite gym to go into and coach?
Presque Isle.
All right. How about it's a Friday night and the gym's packed and there's a team coming to town. Trav, who do you want to play against on a Friday night in Fort Kent?
Oh, Holton. Yeah, Holton.
Lon, how about you?
I'm going back to Limestone.
All right. And then Ryan, Friday night at home?
I'll go back to that because it was a Friday night at home.
Corey, how about you? Friday night at home. Who do you want coming to town?
You know what? I'm going to Caribou because I love playing against Fountain Duty.
Okay. And then, Coach, how about you? Big game on a Friday night in Fort Kent. Who do you want coming to town?
Presque Isle or Caribou. Either one of them, Presque Isle or Caribou.
All right.
My alma mater is Caribou. I don't know if you knew that, Tom.
I did. I remember. I remember the Cardiac Kids.
Yeah.
All right, Trav, how about this one? Coming down to the wire, you got to pass to a teammate to hit a game winner. Who are you going to pass to for the game-winning shot?
Not just because he's here, but Lonnie. No doubt.
All right.
No doubt.
How about if it can't be someone on this panel? If it wasn't someone in this room right now?
Brent Markey.
Okay. Ron, how about you?
See, I don't know that I passed to many people that weren't on this panel.
Game on the line. You weren't passing them on.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, I was gonna say Ryan. All right, but if I can't go Ryan, you know what? I'm gonna go with a guy that is you actually wouldn't expect. He made some big shots for us. He was a classmate of mine. We're excluding the guys on this panel. Derrick Mcbride, he made some big shots for us. Down in that Callis game, he made some huge ones. He made I believe after I fouled out, made a couple big threes in overtime. I'm going Derrick Mcbride. He
had a big game too off the bench against Madawaska. I remember Matt Rosignol going, "Who is that kid? Where did he come from?" Lefty,
and he had a nice 3-point shot. He didn't get many shots up with the guys in this panel, but he came through when he needed to.
He had a big game down in Holton our freshman year too. I remember that, and we won that game too. So that was a big one.
All right, Ryan, how about you? You got to pass to a teammate for a game winner. Who are you going to?
Well, if I'm not driving to the basket and kicking to Lon, or driving to the basket and dumping it to Corey for a missed layup and a rebound and a putback game winner, yeah, I got to go with another senior on our team, Jason. I mean, he was like our shooter. That guy could get hot at a moment's notice. So I would go with kick out to Jason for the 3.
All right, and Corey, how about you? If you got to pass to a teammate for a game winner.
Ryan will never let me live that down. And on my 1,000th point that he dumped the ball to me and I missed the layup and got the ball and then made my 1,000th point on a foul shot. So he'll keep saying that story over and over and over again. But anyway, I was going to say Jason, but I'll go with someone that on our senior year team that he was actually a junior and that came off the bench, but he was never afraid to hit the open shot when he was wide open, and he was pretty good at hitting it. I'll go with Lucas Levac.
Shout out to Lucas. All right. Hey, Coach, how about you? You got to drop the game-winning play. You need someone to get a bucket for you, and it can't be somebody in this room. Who are you going to drop the play for?
Well, I got a story. I drew it up for Lucas. We're playing Madawaska, and we did an inbounds thing where he got a 3 at the top of the key. We ran it 4 different times, and he got 4 threes in a row down the stretch in the 4th quarter. We ran it a 5th time, and I said, this time the defender's going to cheat, so give it to the screener as he screens and rolls to the hole. we still tried to give it to Lucas. They picked it. They got a layup, and they scored to win.
No way.
So we went to the well one too many times.
Yeah.
But
Right.
Lucas.
Good choice right there. All right, next question here. So I'm curious what you guys did to get ready for games. I know for us, my time, we get ready in the cafeteria, getting shots up and stuff like that. Kind of huddle in the hallway next to the what was the art room at the time. Trav, what were you guys doing pregame? What was the pregame ritual or routine for you guys?
Well, usually it was getting into the calf, trying to get up some shots. But a lot of times, like the night before a game, if it was a Saturday game, a home game, or whatever, guys would get together, like Aaron, Brent, Carey, we'd all get together and we'd watch. I don't know if you remember this. This is way dating you, but they had it was called Superstars, and it was a highlight video, VHS tape, and like Michael's highlights to music were on there. Larry Bird's, Dominique Wilkins, Karl Malone, all the big late 80s, early 90s stars were there. And that's what we do. Like if there was a big game coming up, we'd get together and we'd watch that video or watch some basketball. But if we were at the gym, I really don't remember in the locker room because it was coach's time. You know, if we were in the locker room, coach was there with us. There wasn't a lot of just hanging out. But yeah, getting shots up in the calf kind of thing.
How about you, Lon? You guys do anything special?
As a team, I don't remember that. I can't remember things that we did necessarily as a team. For me, I like to when I got in the cafeteria, I'd like to go to the free throw line and try to make sure I was making some free throws. I always felt like if I could see the ball go through the hoop, things were going to be okay. And I thought the free throw line would do that, and so I would try to get some free throws up.
Ryan, how about you guys? You guys do anything special?
I mean, for personally, what I remember is, whether it's me and Matt Thibodeau and Corey, or Corey and Matt Thibodeau and Jason and I, we get out of school, do the loop about 45 minutes, stop in at Rock's Diner.
Yes.
We had that luxury being young. We burned it out, get a pregame meal, get back to the high school, throw up some shots in the cafeteria, and get ready to go.
All right, Corey, I'm guessing it's the same thing for you. Same routine.
Oh God, yeah. We Mickey Levac loved us when he owned Rocks. We'd walk in there, and as soon as he saw us walk in, we were getting free spaghetti or free puts in or a couple of dogs or whatever we felt like eating for that time because it was game day. He said, "Eat up, boys," and then go start shooting. So that's what we would do. We jump in with Matt Thibodeau or Chad Bushy and do the loop a bunch of times and go eat at Mickey's and then head back to the gym and change up and start shooting.
All right, Coach, how about you? What was the pregame routine? You do anything special before each game, or what was your approach?
I wanted to make sure that I could put the game plan up so it was visual. So I'd spend some time in the third quarter putting it on the board. So when we talked about it, they'd hear it, they'd read it, they could feel it. And then if I had any time to myself, believe it or not, I love to listen to Led Zeppelin. I was a Led Zeppelin. In fact, before the Holton game, Stairway to Heaven was the last thing I listened to before I took the court. So.
First time I hear this.
There we go. Yeah. All right, how about this one? Toughest loss, Travis. Toughest loss.
Oh, toughest loss.
It can either be toughest or just the one you wish you could take back, like a game you shouldn't have lost.
MCI first round playoff game my senior year. We just got punched right in the face in the first half, and we're down by 26 at half, something like that, 28 maybe, and ended up by losing the game by 28. And even made their coach, and it wasn't one of those deals where sometimes you're down by 30 and you lose by 30 because they played subs the whole second half. That wasn't the deal. Their coach we ended up by, I remember in that third quarter we caused them to call a timeout, and their coach was pissed. We haven't made a good run. And Coach Murph, we come running in, and Coach Murph is, you see what just happened? You see what happened? And everyone's like, kind of like, what? You made them call a timeout. They're kicking your ass, and now they had to call a timeout because you're going to take this game from them. And from that moment, that second half on, it was a war, but we just screwed ourselves in the first half, and that was a 1-8 seed matchup. And they were legit. They were good. They had a guy that was like 6'8", 6'9". But for two reasons, I guess, guys, is that number one, we maybe would have had a chance if we wouldn't have kicked ourselves in the ass in the first half and we would have come out and played ball. But that was like the first time you ever been to a circus as a young kid. That's what going to the auditorium that first time was like holy shit. All you saw was a sea of green on one side, and it was loud, and the court was different. And so it was very new, very unfamiliar, and it showed in that first half. So it pisses me off, and that game hurts because of that reason, because I think we could have competed a lot better. But then the real reason is that ended it. That was it. After we lost that game, that was the end of my career, and I guess I was bitter for a little while. I was really bitter for a little while that I only had Coach Murph for 1 year, and I saw what we did in 1 year, and then I became really bitter. And I'll be honest, guys, I was really bitter when I saw what Lonnie and Ryan and Corey and the runs they were making and the way they were playing ball. And for a while, I was happy for them. I really was. I was very happy for them. I bleed green, but I was just angry that we didn't have Coach earlier. Because I think we could have been, in the same league as Lonnie's senior year and Ryan and Corey's senior year. We could have been right there with them. So losing that game was the worst loss for me.
How about you, Lon?
I'm gonna just continue with what Travis said for a second. I said it before that Murph needed to have that group for another year. That 1 year wasn't enough. I felt like that team had a hell of a lot of talent, and if they had one more year, or we had one more year with Murph, that we could have really made some noise. And then I'm also going to agree with Travis. The last game my senior year, we were playing Camden in the semifinals at the auditorium, and we were up on them. We were up. We might have been up double digits in the third quarter. We were a run and gun team, and we continued to do so. And they crept back, and they ended up getting us at the end. Murph mentioned Geisler had a breakout game. I think he scored in the high 30s that game, and we just didn't. We didn't quite figure it out in time. But they ended up in the state final with Andy Bedard's Mountain Valley team. And I felt like we were right there with those teams. I thought that that's the one game that I really feel like if we go back to the middle of that third quarter, that the outcome would be a little bit different. So Camden Rockport for me, my senior year, and again, like Travis, it was the last game of my career.
All right, how about you? Toughest loss?
Sense of pattern. Obviously, every playoff loss in the auditorium is tough. That Camden game was tough, only because, we always felt like we underachieved. Obviously, being on the team for 4 years and growing the team and getting to that point our senior year where we actually felt like, we were always going to be better than most of the teams we stepped on the court with. That year we really felt like we had a shot at the very least winning Eastern Mains and if not states. I think, that loss to Orono in the semifinals was rough. If you go back to that year, I think going into that year, we were 0-2 to start the season. I think it's because maybe our heads were a little big or just we weren't prepared well enough. And we got killed by Orono in a preseason tournament that year. So going into that game, we were the 3 seed, they were the 7 seed. They upset the number 2 seed that Friday night before. We had played them before. We knew we had them. And looking back at it, it's really disappointing because, you post that game and I watched it and I feel like every single one of us on the team underperformed that game. We had some bad breaks, but that was obviously by far the toughest loss for me. Because, what could have been. You think about what could have been if we would have actually played up to our potential that game, because we were better than them. I don't mind saying it now. We were up. We were up and down most of the game. We came out to. We had a slow start. We got in some foul trouble with our big guys. I think Matt Thibodeau had a couple of early cheap fouls that probably shouldn't have been fouls. I think that really hurt us because they were a bigger team, and Corey can only fend off so many big guys. And we were up in the second half, but we just kind of lost it in the fourth quarter. A bit of desperation. So, obviously I remember going into the locker room after that game, and it was probably the worst feeling I've ever felt, knowing that it was the end. And, you know, being with Corey for 4 years, being with the guys that I played with for as long as we did, being with Coach for 4 years, you know, obviously we wanted to win it for him as well. And we felt like, I personally felt like I let, you know, Coach down, I let Corey down a little bit. And, you know, so that was a tough pill to swallow, looking back at it, obviously, you know, then and now.
Corey, I'm guessing it's the same game for you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll go back to Canyon Rockport real quick with that whole story. Is one thing I'll never forget is when guys are dunked on us, and they didn't expect us to come back so fast that he was going to the crowd like this, trying to get the fans going. And I took the ball off so fast, Laughn took off so fast that we went down and scored a layup before half. I think 4 out of 5 guys didn't even make it past half court. We already went down and scored a layup, and we're full court pressing again. And I watched it because they have it on PBS every play once in a while. And the announcer goes, "Boy, can these guys run!" Because we actually, 4 or 5 guys didn't make it past half court. We had a layup doing full court press, waiting to take the ball out. And guys are still going like this. So, yeah, that's one game I thought we should have won. And then, yeah, going back to Orono, for all season long, we always had Matt playing against one of the bigger guys. And then as soon as he get a foul, we'd automatically switch. And he'd go on one of the off guys just to try to preserve his foul trouble. And then we'd do it at the start to try to preserve my foul trouble to begin with. And I feel like I dropped the ball on that game too, because I didn't switch. I didn't switch after Matt had that first foul, and I should have. And I don't know why I did it to this day. But I figured we'd just stick with the game plan and just go, and I should have switched. Because Gavitt wasn't that good. You know, Matt Matt just had, you know, his footwork wasn't always there all the time. So he would get like little cheapy calls because he'd get, you know, use his body, get bumped. So, he should have just went and guarded Ulrich, and I should have just went and guarded Gavitt after the first foul, and it might have been a whole different story, but I don't know. It's all hindsight 2020 at this point in time. But yeah, that was the worst one. Like Ryan said, I felt, you know, I really felt that we should at least gone to Eastern Maine Finals at the very least.
Coach, do you have a game that sticks out as the most painful? I'm guessing they all hurt, but is there one that you kind of look back on?
The 2 semifinal losses were awful. I mean, even though we lost them by 3 to 5 points, 5 or 6 points, and we're in it, and we're supposed to be respectful, I felt like we were the better team. It's a game that I play back in my head. I watch it, and I go, why did we do that? Why didn't I do this? Why did we do – I know in one of those games, the game was tight. I think we may have had a small lead, and I yelled to Lonnie. He turned his head to look at me to call a timeout, and somebody just threw him a pass, hits him in the back of the head, and goes out of bounds. You know, I mean, that's the kind of thing. I mean, that's the way those 2 games went. And I agree with Corey that Orono won the play-in game to be number 7, then beat number 2, and then beat us. And then went on. I think they won it all. They made a run, and that. So, also not to say anything, but didn't really like showing up at that game and seeing 3 Bangor Orono referees and Rick Lyon sitting in the stands behind us when they told us there were no Aroostook County referees available. Because that's back when we're supposed to get a rep. You know, we're supposed to be represented. And Matt's 2 fouls were on screens.
Yeah.
On screens, first 3 minutes. Yeah. So anyway, I could name the referee who's been a bit of a nemesis in the tournament. To this day, he and I can't stand to see each other. But the last time he tapped me on the head and said I needed to simmer down or to calm down, and tapped me on the head, about wanted to take his hand and do something violent with it. But anyway. Yeah.
All right.
Those
Transitioning from that.
2 losses hurt because I thought we could have been Eastern Maine champs both those years.
Tough losses all around right there. So I got a couple more quick questions before we get up out of here. So I know me personally, when I was in high school, I used to love it when the guys in front of us would come back and play just to kind of measure up against those guys. So I'm curious, Trav, you're the elder statesman here. Did you feel the need to come back after you graduated and beat up on the younger guys that were in high school just to kind of put them in their place? Like, were those competitive juices still there? Like, yeah, I know Murph had mentioned being an assistant coach. Like, did you look forward to coming back and playing against the guys that came along after you, just to kind of measure yourself up against those guys, but also put them in their place? And at what point did it stop, or does it still go on to this day? Do you still feel it?
No, it ain't going on anymore. I get beat up enough in my own yard here. I'm all set. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just graduating, and then here come two super studs. I mean, and really, I mean, Ryan and Corey are studs. I mean, they're good, but they had classmates that could ball too, and were not as good, but were very good ball players. And yeah, I mean, being a year, 2, 3 removed, you're like, holy shit, man! I wish I had played with them too. I wish they would have been around when, and I think about that often, like Ryan and Corey, just a year removed. Lonnie could have been a junior. They could have been freshmen. Shit. That would have been a hell of a team. But yeah, I used to love, coach would let me go and get into practice, sneak practices in. And then especially when coach would get ready to prep for big games or playoff runs, whatever. And they'd have game plans, and he'd say, hey, Trav, you want to come in and help, get a couple guys maybe, and we need to work against the 2-3 zone, or we're going to throw the diamond trap at you, full court and then half court. We need you guys to try to break pressure, those type of things. And it wouldn't take long. It went from, okay, situational scenario things to, okay, let's get the game on. Let's just play here, But yeah, it was always fun, It really was. And then when I started got coaching with Coach Merv, guys like your brother Charlie and all them, then it was a ton of fun, because I was actually on the sideline, and running practices and at times getting in drills with them even. But that was a lot of fun. Yeah.
How about you, Lon? Did you like coming back? Was that something that you kind of look forward to, as something you wanted to do if you were back in town? If you could get in there and run with kids that were in high school at the time, or kids that came after you, like, is that something you look forward to doing?
Yeah, always. Actually, I'm going to go back just for a second. I thought Charlie didn't have any basketball teams when they played. I thought Charlie said he didn't get a chance to play.
Yeah.
No, you know what? It's always fun just to compete. We did a lot of it on the playground and in the yard, so it wasn't like I necessarily had to come back to practice. But I will say this: as fun as it was to play with Ryan in high school, we had a good time playing against each other in college. St. Joe's was one of the best teams. And I always liked getting a chance to see Ryan and be out on the court with him. I think somewhere I've got a picture of him in his St. Joe's uniform and me in my Farmington uniform on the court somewhere where we're guarding each other. And so
let's find that picture. I want that picture.
You know what? I'll see if I can round that one up somewhere. So being able to compete against Ryan was fun. Corey and I, it's more arm wrestling now. I beat him a couple times in arm wrestling. You know what? You're always competitive no matter what, but it's the friendly competition, and then being able to come back and just play again with some of your friends. That's always a good time too.
All right, Ryan, how about you? Obviously, you're one of the best to do it. Did you like coming back? And I got one story to tell real quick about you coming back. So I used to look forward to alumni games when I was a kid, and you guys coming back. And it took you a while to come back because you played in college. But I can remember one year you came back, and it goes back to you dunking in middle school. So you had a breakaway, and there was a foreign exchange student kid on the basketball team at the time, and he fouled you so you wouldn't get the breakaway. And the place got so mad, and they started booing this kid because they wanted to see a dunk. But I remember that very vividly. But like, did you like coming back home playing against guys that came after you, like, and just to kind of let them know where you stand, like, hey, don't sleep on me, like I might be older, but
love it. No, obviously, we were all competitive, and like we just love playing the game. So every time I do remember coming back, I was looking for a game, whether it was at the high school or at the college or at an alumni game. The alumni games are especially fun, and I do remember that specifically at that one particular alumni game. Yeah. Now that you mention it. But yeah, I think I always thought it was great. It was great to get, to meet up with all the guys you had played with for the longest time. I'll never forget, actually. I think it was actually I moved out west after I graduated college. I went back home. It might have been Christmas, obviously. And I think we all kind of got together and played like a kind of a valley tournament at the college. And it's the one time I actually got to play with Corey and Laughn. I think Trav was on that team, and your dad was on that team too, actually. And I think we were beating up on, the Pierres of the world and the Joey Canans of the world. And I think that was a really fun time, I think. So obviously I used to love coming back and playing. I used to love actually coming back the funny thing is, all my college teammates, I had some particular that would always come back up during spring break because they loved coming to Fort Kent for one reason or another. I think it was because of, the bars across the border. But so it always bring them up when we were looking for a game, right? And we'd always look to beat up on whoever it was. And it was always great to come back and, play in the men's leagues, play against Travis. I used to remember that all the time. But going back to Laughn's story, that's funny that he brings it up. And I have to tell the story because it hasn't come up on a podcast. And maybe it has because Laughn's been on like 20 of them. But going back to
Tommy might take the show over.
Laughn and I going back in college, Laughn was obviously was a soccer stud in college. And, the soccer season would bleed over into the basketball season. And I remember my freshman year, and it would be Laughn's junior year at Farmington. We'd always play Farmington like the first or second game of the season. And Laughn was always coming into the season late, so we wouldn't get a ton of run. But that second game, he'd be in his rhythm by then. So he'd always play very well against St. Joe's. And the unfortunate part about Laughn is we got to go at it a little bit because I was a freshman, didn't get a ton of run my freshman year. And sophomore year, his senior year, kind of the same thing. We played early. I was getting a little more run. We'd go at it a little bit. And the second game of my sophomore year, his senior year at Farmington, I had actually gotten injured. I dislocated my shoulder and I missed 10 games that season. So I was actually on the bench. And that year, Laughn actually just went off. I think, he was having a great game, hitting threes left and right. We were obviously the better team, but Farmington had a pretty good team that year. And we go into and at halftime, and Coach Rick Simons at the time just starts going off on us for losing. We're down at halftime, and I'll never forget this. And Laughn knows this because I told him the story. And coach's comment yelling at us top was like, "You let Laughn Berthiaume," but he emphasized from Fort Kent score on you. And I look around, I'm like, what the heck? I know I'm not playing, but give me a little bit of respect. On top of that, my coach's wife at the time is from Fort Kent originally. So he was turning the screws. And that was the funniest story that Laughn and I will go back and talk about forever to this day. We let Laughn Berthiaume from Fort Kent score on us. So Laughn ends up having an awesome game. We end up losing that game his senior year at Farmington. So I'll never forget that one for sure.
All right. And you mentioned something else I'm going to come back to in a second. You brought it up, thankfully, because I got to get something cleared on something you brought up. But I'm going to go to Corey first. Corey, did you like coming back home after you were done playing? Did you feel the need to let everyone know, I'm Mr. 1,000, 1,000? All right. Don't sleep on me. Don't forget about me.
I stuck around Fort Kent for a little while. So, I played the men's leagues and everything else. So, I really didn't really – the only person that really kind of irritated me as watching him come up through high school was Chad Fournier. If he would actually got a little fire under his ass every once in a while. I mean, that guy had a triple-double, but it would be with blocks. You get 15 blocks a game, 10 rebounds, and 10 points. Like Travis would say just a while ago, if we would have played in Travis's era, we would have done amazing things. But if J.R. Bushy and Chad Fournier would have played in our era, it would have been the same thing, same scenario. So, that was probably only, and my brother, I just love coming back and, beating on my brother and going back to the cage. And so there was no really any specific instances, but I do want to say that you guys are making fun of me about the whole head fakes and ball fakes. I think the guy over here, Travis, was the king of the head fake and pivot spin and then ball fake and then go up for a layup, because I remember watching him going all your games on my 8th grade year when you were a senior. Seeing you spin around 15 times before you get a ball, a shot up in the paint was unbelievable. And with the whole rebounding thing for a foul shot, I don't know if you remember this, but every once in a while, you always knew the guy that was going to go towards the middle. And I would look up to the stands and you would signal to me, you do the whole spin, and I wouldn't. There's a bunch of times I actually got a rebound off of that. So I got to fake maybe about, 25 of my 1,000 rebounds on you.
There we go. All kinds of love. All right, so I want to circle back to one thing real quick that Ryan was talking about. So that tournament you mentioned, you came back and played it with Laughn, Corey. I actually played one game with you guys in that tournament. It was the first game of the tournament, and I remember I was either a junior or senior, and I know this for a fact happened, but there's something else I got to ask Laughn to verify because no one can verify it. I remember freaking out, texting people I'm on the court with Laughn Berthiaume, Ryan Martin, Corey Thibodeau. I think Travis might have even been playing too. My dad, I think even Tom Pelletier might have played too. Everybody who ever played from Fort Kent So like I played my first game with you guys. Like I actually played well. I'm so pumped, but I had to go to work at Rocks. And my manager at the time was Sean Babin.
I do remember that. I do remember that. You were trying to get your shift covered, weren't you?
Yeah, so I was trying to get at him. I'm like,
Quit my
Sean, I'm
job.
going to be completely honest. Like, I'm playing basketball with Laughn Berthiaume, Ryan Martin, and Corey Thibodeau. Can I just get out of work today? He's like, no, you need to come to work right now. I was like, fucking great.
Sean's our boy. You should.
I know. I thought that would have just saying your names would have got me through. But so I know that for a fact happened. That's my one moment I had with you guys, and looking up to you guys. Like I remember that to this day. Like that was awesome. But the day before, we had. I think it was like Christmas break, so we just had practice. We had practice when we were playing pickup. And then I remember like my brother Charles came through, and then Mitch Follett was on my team, so his brother Aaron came through, so they came out and played with us afterwards. And then I need this to be fact-checked because I'm pretty sure this is what happened, but no one can verify. Like halfway through like playing, Laughn Berthiaume comes out the locker room door and starts playing with us. And then I'm pretty sure Ryan came in at some point and started playing pickup with us. And Corey might even have came out too. But like no one ever remembers it. So I don't know if I dreamt it or if it actually happened.
I actually remember. I can say that I don't know if it was this time, but I do remember playing with you at the UMFK gymnasium.
Okay.
When you were back in high school, I do remember that.
But no one can verify the day before coming to the high school and playing pickup with the high school team.
Oh, well, that might have happened too, actually.
It would have been the day before.
If we were coming back to play, we were probably strolling in a little bit late because Corey kept us up too late.
Okay. All right. Makes sense.
Nice.
Hey, Lonnie, you're always a leader, dude. We always followed you.
All right, so we're almost 2 hours here, guys. We've been going at it, so I might make this a two-parter and break it up over 2 parts. But before we get up out of here, I'm gonna give everyone a chance to say one last thing before we go. So I'm gonna start with Coach. Final words tonight before we get up out of here.
Well, I want to say one thing. Ryan mentioned a couple times where he let me down. Somebody else has mentioned where nobody's ever let me down. Nobody on this screen has ever let me down. We may have lost games, and we may have made mistakes that cost us the loss or prevented victory, but nobody's ever let me down because everybody gave whatever they had, whenever, as often as they could. And mistakes happen as part of life, as part of games, as part of. I mean, I could say I let them down, and at times I feel like I did in those 2 semifinal games that I didn't have them quite as sharp as they should have been. But life goes on, and there's not a person on the screen that didn't make me proud when they were playing. The biggest compliment a coach can get from another coach is he wants your player, and I can tell you that. After we got established, there were lots of coaches that wanted Laughn Berthiaume to play on their team, or Ryan Martin and Corey Thibodeau. Timmy Prescott wanted Corey Thibodeau every time. He says he'd look good in a blue 32. He'd look good in a blue 32. I said, yeah, well, he looks pretty good in a green 32. So, but anyway, point being, they've never let me down. They've always made me proud. I always feel blessed. I look back on my years, and I've been blessed. I'm blessed. Great people, great experiences. Just wish we had a couple more wins under our belts.
All right, Travis, how about you? Last words before we get up out of here.
Well, I mean, you just listen to the guys on this podcast right here, and it's hard not to see how Coach Murph has influenced each and every one of us into the men that we are today. And I think you could bring in every player that he's ever coached, and they'd all share the same type of stories about Coach, and how he wanted to just make it. How he just stated that, you didn't let me down. How he needed to let his former players know that, there was never anybody that let me down. We didn't take care of things together. There's things that I could have done better. There's things, that I wish I could take back. And I think Murph's, as great of a coach as he is, and I mean, I think we all know how good of a coach he is. He's an even better man. And he's not coaching me anymore, but he's still coaching me throughout life. Every time I talk to him, every time I'm around him. And I think that's the most important thing about Coach Murphy is that he's influenced so many people in this area that would, if Coach said, hey, listen, we're going to go. I got to put together a team, and we got to go. You and 9 other guys, let's go. And 9 other guys and me would say, all right, let's go. What do we need to do? And not even know what we needed to do or who we're going to play, but we were going to go, and we're going to give everything we had for him. And he just made you feel so important through the whole process. And it was never about an individual. And he had some great individual players, Ryan, Corey, Lonnie, I mean, just on down the line. But it was never about them. It was always about the team. And he always made everyone feel important and that we were always in this together. And just hearing these other guys right now talk about how, Ryan saying how he kind of feels bad because he feels like he let the team down. Corey feels bad because he didn't make the switch on defense. We don't point fingers because that's nothing Coach Murph would ever done. We lost together. We take the responsibility for everybody else. And I just love the way Coach Murph has influenced so many of us. And you can just hear it in today's podcast that he's made a lasting impression that's going to go far beyond any tournament victory. I call it the Murph influence. I wouldn't be the person I am today, the dad I am today, the coach I am today without him. And I think everybody on this podcast could probably say the same. So he's a living legend. And I hope he keeps living for a long time.
All right, Laughn, your final words before we get up out of here tonight.
Yeah, I think going along with what Travis said, I'm going to keep it a little bit shorter, but the one of the things that Murph has always, I guess, taught us and that I've tried to pass on to my players is that you don't use words like I, me, or you. It's always we or us. It's you're in it together, and it's a team thing. And as a coach or as a player, you never try to separate. It's always got to be about that unity. And going back to one of the first things we talked about, Travis is saying, we're storming the court in the first game that we win at the beginning of the season, and Murph's right in the mix, and then Murph's talking about the dead bug or the ladybug or whatever the hell he was saying. He's
Dead bug.
Dead bug. Yeah, and he's in the shower celebrating. I mean, he was one of us beginning to end. There was never a disconnect, and I think that's important. And I think for me, I'm the one person on here that's been teammates with the other players, and I'm thankful that that's kind of the mentality we had, and we also shared a hell of a lot off the court, which I think is very important. The time spent off the court sometimes is just as valuable, or sometimes even more valuable than the time on the court. And then right before I get out, I'm going to say that goes right from player, the best player on the court, right down to the team manager. I'm going to give a shout out to my team manager all through 3 sports in high school, James Harvey. I mean, he's as much of a teammate as mine that I've had as anybody. I keep in touch with him all the time, weekly, and so I think that's part of the culture.
Shout out to James. Has James been watching anyway? Has Harvey been watching?
I think so. I text him weekly. So.
All right. Ryan, your final words before we get up out of here.
Yeah, so I think to reiterate what both these guys said, I think really it's about, it's about the bond. The fact that, all of us are sitting here 25 years late, 25 plus, I assume. I don't even know anymore, right? We're all sitting on here and kind of talking about, all these experiences we had like it was yesterday. It's pretty amazing. I haven't really, I was always concerned about coming on here and thinking about I don't remember any of this shit. But as you start getting into it, it all comes back to you. It's like it was last week, seriously. And it's crazy to look at this panel to see Coach Murph and Travis, they actually, they started it all really, if you think about it. They kind of set the stage for, Laughn's middle years and for me and Corey to actually be able to excel. It got us excited. It got us, it got us confident about kind of the things that we could do. So I think that's really the awesome thing about it, really. I mean, I think that, the bonds that we've made, like Laughn talks about the off-court stories. I mean, that would be a 4-hour podcast at the very least.
Oh, God. Let's not even go there.
It might not be something for the public to consume, but, those are things that I'll always remember.
All right, and you're all warmed up now, so you got the podcast leaders out, so we're still going to make that solo podcast happen, right?
Yes.
Hey, I'm a team player, so I don't come on without Coach and the rest of the guys.
Oh, geez.
We'll figure it out. All right. Corey, final words before we get up out of here.
Okay, well, I pretty much think everybody's hit the nail on the head. And the only thing I'm going to say is a quick story is Murph always had the way of bringing out the best in everybody. And with that said, is my first practice in high school ever. It was a tryout practice. And he ran us through drills. There's a bunch of seniors and there's a bunch of juniors. And just working hard. I'm giving everything I had. And we knew there was a time, not everybody was going to make the team. And as being a freshman, I didn't know if he was going to make JV. So I knew I had to bust my butt. And Murph just kept on us. And I hit the late bus at the end of the night, and I got a ride back to St. Francis, and I walked in still in my shorts and T-shirt, and I walked in with my bags, and I walked in the house. My mom had some dinner ready for me, wait for me to walk in the house, see how everything went. And I literally just fell around the kitchen floor because I was exhausted. Because I had never actually, been in a practice that hard where he pushed us that hard. But the thing is I think he just had that knack with not only with the drills, but just all the emotion he had and he put into every drill and how he had to go for it. That from that point on, I knew what to expect, and my sneakers were laced.
Lace them up tight.
Absolutely.
That's what. Hey, and how many ankles did you take?
Oh, bunches.
That's going to do it for tonight's episode. Just want to thank everybody for coming on here. You guys inspired everyone else that came after you guys. That's for sure. Just seeing jerseys in the trophy case, and I know you guys are talking about middle school and stuff like that. I mean, I can even remember a coach being the vice principal at the middle school and him kind of conducting tryouts, and just wanted to impress him because of what he did with you guys. You guys inspired everyone that came after you, and I could probably say my team did what Travis did. We ended that drought after Ryan and Corey. We got them back to Bangor, and it's been good ever since then. So shout out to class of 05, which that might be a little reunion happening soon as well. So thank you for watching tonight's episode. Make sure you're checking out all the previous episodes out there on YouTube and on Facebook, and then plenty more to come. So stay tuned. Thank you.